So welcome everybody listening now and in the future. Welcome to the Hearth. This is one of our interviews that we are doing. With one of our intentions is to create community and to have our community know the people who have done so much in over the years in pre and perinatal somatics. And today we're interviewing Frank Carbone, um, who has really been a part of pre and perinatal work for a long time and is bringing something unique with all the things that he has done. So welcome, Frank. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
delighted to be here. It's nice to see everyone, and I want to welcome everyone that is out there in computer land.
Well, Frank, why don't you just tell people a little bit about how you got into pre and perinatal somatics, a little bit more about yourself, if you'd be willing.
Yeah, I'm willing. So I think really the most profound part of the journey um, that really highlights how I evolved towards the pre and perinatal work, which comes from purely from movement. My interest was in movement, and living in a yoga ashram after I was retired from the New York City Department of Sanitation. The evolution from being a garbage man, musician, DJ, and bartender. That's how I used my body. That was somatic for me, and I wasn't thinking about anything. I was always on the go and very physical. And yoga was like the first interruption to like a self-destructive path of nonchalantly just using my body in pretty extreme ways, such as 3-hour gigs in Manhattan, slam dancing at punk rock shows, being a bouncer, getting into very physical aspects of life. Then came a world of pain, a world of anxiety, and things that I was not prepared for. And that led me to getting into yoga, which before we started the tape, I was getting into at this present time, coming back to my roots and my interest to yoga and movement and the spiritual aspect of that. But the highlight from movement of yoga and then Feldenkrais and gyrotonic. These are things that I went out to Germany to train with Julia Horvath and became a gyrotonic instructor in Florida. I had a very busy studio, and when I lived in Florida, I met a Russian shaman and studied with him for 5 years and became his assistant, and I was doing medical intuitive readings with people at night after I would finish doing my gyrotonic work. So my gyrotonic clients became both movement clients, and then it turned out I just had this thing that was, I don't know, a sight of seeing things. I guess there's many reasons why in my perception, I don't like to use the word trauma, but I had a lot of trauma, growing up that, through the pre and perinatal work, both from my birth and early life, was very challenging. Growing up on the streets, being in a Catholic Italian American family, we didn't pay too much attention about sensations and feelings and things. That certainly wasn't about looking back at anything. In fact, my father's message to us always was, "Don't look back." So here I am spending 20, 25 years hanging out with people looking back at their lives. And me still looking back at my life, because that's the sequence just keeps on moving. But coming into finding continuum, which I found through gyrotonic. I was in my second training. Julie Horvath, who created the work, brought the work to the United States, and he set up himself in Miami, and I was living down in Florida at the time, teaching gyrotonic and doing energy work, getting into things like Reiki and John of God and all kinds of like odd spiritual stuff that was going on down in Florida. I was interested in everything, I'd be just like, well, go see what this is about. Trying to heal, path of healing. So in this second gyrotonic training down in Miami, I got partnered with someone who had just come back from a 8-day retreat with Emily Conrad and Susan Harper. They did things called depths retreats, where they went into silence for 4 days. And I did a bunch of those. I mean, I did a lot of work with Emily. When I got drawn to the work, she had asked me if I ever did continuum, because I actually was, moving in a way with an ache and pain. And I went, oh, she's like, oh God, have you ever done continuum before? That's a beautiful sound. I'm like, well, it was actually a grunt because I threw out my back, So I says, but continuum, I said, I was really into yoga, and the first yoga journal I bought in 1987, Emily Conrad was on the cover. And I bought that issue, and I started reading about continuum and how she was in the, her consciousness was in the water with the sea creatures. And, ironically, my nickname is Whale. So I've had this connection to whale ever since I'm like 6 years old. So there's all these connections that are actually funny. I mean, it's pretty comical looking back at it. But I got to speak to this woman about continuum. She was happily to get on the floor and do a demonstration of continuum. And she started going into very embryonic. And I was sitting in a chair like, wow, that is the amazing thing I ever seen. And my ex-partner was at the train. She ran over. She's like, what is that woman doing? Why are you looking at her like that? I'm like, that's continuum. Do you ever hear that continuum work? And a month after that situation, I flew out to New York and met Emily. That's almost 25 years ago. I went up to upstate New York to the Omega Institute. And I felt totally out of place because, first of all, everybody was eating vegetarian food. And I was like, well, how's this going to go? They didn't have any air conditioning, and I was staying in this room with a fan, and I was dripping, for 11 days. But one of the most remarkable things, meeting Emily was like when I met Ray. The minute I walked into this big hall, there was about 70 people at this workshop. Some amazing people. Emily did a beeline towards me. She said, what's your name? Are you Frank Carbone? I said, yes. She said, are you in the mafia? I said, well, we can't talk about those things. She said, okay, more important, can you make sauce? I said, yes, I can. Okay, come on in. How the hell did you get here?
Wow.
What do you do? Why are you limping? I says, well, I'm a retired New York City sanitation worker. Did you ever pick up garbage in Brooklyn? I said, yes, I did. So she took me by the hand and wanted to know how I wound up at her workshop. And so I told her the story, and she was very fascinated that I was like, oh yeah, I'm into Hannah Somatics, and I'm into Feldenkrais. And she's like, Tommy Hannah was my friend. Moshe Feldenkrais was one of my best friends. You're going to get an earful. And I did. That was a big invocation. At that point, she was working on turning to gold in the womb. So she was doing demonstrations with sound on the floor, and there's 70 people around. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Who is this woman? Her hair was out to here, but I felt attracted to, like, wow, she, there again, I'm watching her um, really turn back time in a 5 minute demo that, she put her head back at one point, and I could swear I saw her turn like 16 years old. And I was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing I've like ever witnessed in my life. It really was. It was
You
so,
know,
so amazing. So,
Frank, as I'm listening to you and watching you, I can really, are you there, Frank?
I'm here, but you
Oh, yeah.
froze. Now you're good.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you and as I'm watching you in your body, there's a way that I really see that these things really spoke to you, like that, how that continuum spoke to you from the moment you saw it. And then just what you're describing, I can just really see in your body that resonance that you must have experienced right away.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite animated. When I talk about it, I get excited, and because it's thrilling to me. It's still thrilling to me to think that, like I did that, like looking back at spending so much time, how much time I would spend with that person who I was so, touched by the first time I ever met her. I became, they were calling me like, Emily became like the Grateful Dead. I followed her everywhere for like 2 years. I exhausted all my funds just traveling around the country, working with her. And she was collaborating with, all these cool people like Susan Harper and Angela Farmer, a yoga teacher, and things that, she put herself in these in these positions with people, because pattern movement was, she was just so, we would have these robust conversations about gyrotonic because, she met Julia Horvath once. He put her on the gyrotonic machine, and, she's like, well, first of all, the guy looked like Rasputin. He has like very long hair, and he's got a really interesting presence. And he's a dear friend of mine. So, you're doing pattern movement, making circles, very dancer like, everything is elegant, and, you want to get to the dance. So when I met Emily in that first workshop, um, it immediately, I immediately took it to Manhattan. I was working on the Lower East Side teaching gyrotonic, and I would have these very cool clients where I'm like, hey, would you be into playing with some sound while we do some gyrotonic? And they were up for that. And it turns out that one of the women who was at the workshop in upstate New York, was the first time she ever did continuum. Emily asked me to work with her at lunchtime to do like office half hours with her. And I hung out with her, and she was very cool. Christina Casanova. I mean, I can say her name because she is the person that would eventually talk about Ray. She had done a bunch of work with Ray, a bunch of womb surrounds with him. And she was my client, and we did a bunch of continuum and gyrotonic. What would be the odds that you'd see somebody in upstate New York doing continuum, and then I would come down to Manhattan and come out of one of my sessions, and she'd be sitting on a machine, and I'm like, weren't you at that continuum, Christina Cass? Oh my God, you teach gyrotonic. She became my client immediately, and we combined the work. So it showed me that, which I'm still many years later, so much into alchemy, you know, taking two things and making a third harmonic. It's very musical. It became very important to me, and my work with Emily led me to deepening into my work with gyrotonic. And she's like, you have to meet this guy out in California. He's Italian, Ray Castellino. And I'm like, what is it with this guy, Ray Castellino? Because in the continuum community, they would bring his name up all the time.
Well, Frank, I think it would be good if you could just describe continuum to someone out there and listening, because we all know what it is,
Right.
but they not may not. So just the elevator speech,
The
vaudeville
elevator,
style.
the elevator speech of continuum is you play with working with a sequence, working with playing with a relationship to gravity, such as sitting, lying down, hanging off a chair, and we work with movement and tracking pleasurable sensation. So it's a radical journey I had with this primary component of continuum is tracking sensation, um, but be on the kind of the open receptivity to things that feel pleasurable, which that in itself took me a very long time because my body went into pain. I'm like, well, I'm really into this continuum stuff. And I think the key component that really drew me in was creating sound. So in Continuum, Emily Conrad, who created the work, started working with making different sounds to open the tissue in different ways. And so, from a cranial standpoint, where we're going into the layers of the body, she had a component of sound and movement that was complementary to different layers: skin, fluid, bone, things of that nature. And she would constantly talk about the motif of the cell and the embryo as a planetary universal blueprint. This is something that we're all connected to, that we all came via that way, via the cell and the embryo. And so, I'm like, well, okay, what did that mean to me, 20 something years ago? But playing with movement and playing with sound, and eventually, I did so much continuum. She just like said, "Hey, I want to make you a teacher," which was a laugh in myself. It wasn't something I wanted. I wasn't going after it. She just, I mean, she would be amazed because I would get my body into these impossible positions that if I thought about doing them, I could never do it. But I wound up doing it because I was in the flow of the continuum, because you're working with movement and you're working with things that, want to be revealed, want to open up, and different sounds and different movements open the tissue in ways that are really handy. Not to get into the womb surround thing, but I would later, finally go to a womb surround and 5 minutes or 10 minutes into sitting on a back jack with Ray and hearing, his opening speech, I would be like, wow, man, it would have been nice to do about an hour of continuum before we started this day, the first day of the womb surround, a lot of talking, right? Orienting and all that kind of stuff, which was fascinating. And I was on every word, but I was also, I'm a fidgety guy. I sit in the back jack and I'm constantly like, around. So I heard the words. I, first hear myself going, man, this would be so good with continuum. And there happened to be a woman there who did continuum. And I said it at the break to her. I'm like, yeah, this would be great with continuum. And then it's like, oh, womb continuum, like this came out of my mouth. I was like, womb continuum. Because just to say, before I met Ray, my continuum work was getting very embryonic without me, looking at any like books at all. I would, be telling, harvesting with Emily. She'd be like, wow, you were really in some interesting things there. I said, yeah, I keep finding myself like I'm in the womb, I'm kind of repairing my body. Like, it was very like, osteopathic. Like when I found out about osteopathy, because in the community, it would be full of craniosacral therapists, osteopaths, therapists of all kinds, people trying to get into their body, people in wheelchairs. Emily took on the most radical things of people who movement was antithetical for, such as spinal cord injuries. And so my journey with her, which took a whole different flight when I moved out to California to do raised training in 2010. I did the first module and came back to New York and told my partner at the time, I says, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this training and come back to New York. It's really, really difficult to be here. The contrast of what was happening was very intense for me. So I wound up moving to Santa Monica, 2 blocks from the Continuum studio. And Emily was like, you never paid for a class. You paid like half price or nothing for workshops. So I did everything. I studied with every teacher, went to every class Emily taught, and started working with her. She took me in as her assistant. She used to take me in, hanging out with her private sessions. And I met the most amazing people who are dear friends of mine now. And they're like, man, that was so wild. You got to work backstage with Emily and do this and that. Became dear friends with her. Hung out at her house, went to movies with her. She was very interested in my work and what was going on in my mind, which, I still can't really say exactly what it is. It's very mysterious. I'm just on this path, very passionate about the continuum work because it really saved my life back then. When I came to continuum, I was in so much pain on every level. It really became somewhat of a baseline starting point for me that has brought me here. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that situation, that hearing about Ray and eventually meeting Ray, and knowing from that first workshop with him that I wanted to train with him. There are people there, I won't mention names, but they're still in the community, and I would eventually be in Ojai with Ray. So planet Ojai is a big part of my story. I call it its own planet because from Queens to thinking about Ojai from where I'm sitting right now in New York and Queens, it's like a different planet. And I went there to see Ray. I got there and seen Ray and Mary Jackson, Tara Blasco, and all these folks that have become very important in my life. I got very deeply into that first module, which was at the Krishnamurti Center, which for me was very interesting because it kept echoing my connection to yoga. I kind of put the yoga on the side and got into, going into more expanded movement. Yoga, living in an ashram and teaching yoga was cool on one hand, but I got very anxious on the other hand because I didn't feel the physical connection to people in the world. I woke up one day and said, okay, I'm not going to live in an ashram anymore. I'm going to be amongst the people. And I think being a sanitation worker and just growing up in a big neighborhood with a lot of people, living in an ashram, like everything got so quiet, so small, and so contemplative. It freaked me out. Freaked me out.
Well, Frank, I would like to go back to the womb continuum for a minute because I can describe my experience doing it with you. And I know other people here may have had the experiences with you, but I know that. May I share my experience?
Yeah, of course. It's your show.
Well, I feel like it's first of all, like you, when you started teaching me about feeling pleasure, I had this freeze, what? What? What are you gonna do?
Right.
And you had a nice way of starting out. You would say you talked about eros.
Yeah.
Eros, which I felt like that was a nice sort of, okay, well, he's letting us in gently into this idea of pleasure. But now, after having done work with you and also just a lot of qigong and other sort of energy medicine things, just the pleasurable sensation of being in gentle movement with the sounds that you teach us to sing or to, I don't know what the verb is, to release, it's, and when I do that, I feel a slowing down. I feel held in a fluid way. It just feels very pleasurable. It's like swimming, doing
Mhm.
ballet underwater, being held. And then you evoke the early time, the womb, and the memories of being there are that emerge. I mean, it just feels so amazing. Like we did recently, you and I, this pre and perinatal community somatic lab, and you brought us into the umbilicus and the umbilical cord, and I had a palpable memory of floating, holding my cord, and feeling the heartbeat of my mother.
Mhm.
And just to be able to do that again,
Mhm.
I mean, it was really remarkable. So I want to give people out there a chance to understand that the memories do come, the slow pleasurable, the vibration of the sounds, and there's so many, like there's a library of them with different purposes, but they do allow the tissue to suddenly float and move. And if you trust it, it's fun and relaxing and rejuvenating, and then also very deep. Like I love this notion of alchemy because you're doing that. You're bringing pre-perinatal work, um, you're bringing the continuum, you're bringing all your years of working with movement, and then also your music, your musician. So it's wonderful to be in your presence and do the womb continuum because it's fun and it's pleasurable.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Thank you. That's very touching to feel that. The umbilicus, the umbilical cord, was the first. Like, I realize that my way is I don't kind of go after things much. Like I have every embryo. I have so many books that haven't read because I kind of look at them and let them kind of come to me. So the umbilical cord came to me in my continuum. There I am, doing this or that, and following the sequence and layering my situation and giving myself the time. I mean,
Time.
time, and slowing down and really being able to, we were taking 11-day retreats, 4 days of silence in the dark. And, I was many times, Emily was right next to me. So we kept trading notes. And so even though it was dark, she can track me. And I was getting into these pieces of feeling the umbilical cord. I'm like, wow, it's like I'm in the room. I would kind of be so slow at developing or redeveloping my presence to, the region of where my umbilical cord was my belly button. My fingers would constantly be kind of poking around in there or soothing and playing with sound and softening the tissue, where eventually, my hands started like stalking, just like, my fluid movement. And then, I would let go of this umbilical cord and be like, oh my God, it's still there. Like I still have the presence of my umbilical cord. And, I'd be, we'd come out of silence and I would spend 3-4 days just like in the womb. I would take naps, I ate, I went to the bathroom, came back in the room. I mean, because you're there, you just, and I mean, I have an intention of having longer retreats with the womb surrounds, having continuum doing a continuum workshop before the workshop, the womb surround, the womb continuum. Because bringing the continuum into the womb surround, it's it is emerging. It's alchemy of two modalities, but the structure of it is in the womb surround is I teach a piece of continuum every day that's directly embryonic. There are different things where you're just playing with gravity, pushing into things where you're not doing an embryological situation. But in my history now over many years, things that came towards me like the umbilical cord, that I became very interested in. Like being the placenta is very interesting to me, and I've played with it in womb surrounds where I'm in and out of the placenta, and merge in and come out of, and then I kind of leave it aside. It's like music. It's like certain songs become very interesting. I play them for a while, then it's like, okay, what else do I have out there? The bones are very interesting to me. The preconception, I spent a lot of time working with what I felt in my body from a preconception time, and it's very, very interesting coming into that period of time that from preconception conception and being one cell. I did that in one of my womb surrounds recently in Ojai, where we play with being in one cell, like the first cell, and spend some time there. That's something I would love to do something around hanging out in a cellular, like spend the first week cellularly and work with that from a continuum standpoint. So we're playing with the context of the hands actually turning this way, and the womb is, it's very present. It's, just like that presence of the umbilical cord. I live in the womb. I'm constantly, wherever I go, I take my womb with me. If I have more time, if I'm stuck in traffic. Yesterday I was driving back from driving up to upstate, and I hit some traffic, and then I was driving back down from upstate this morning. I'm in my car just doing this and putting my hand back on the steering wheel.
Just do it.
So the word I really want to, my offering is to make it portable. Make the womb being going into knowing the presence of the umbilical cord, because from my view, it's still we're still connected to it. We just don't know it. It's almost like coming into the pre and perinatal work. We're connected to it. We just don't know it until you take a womb surround, and then you're like, oh God, this is going to be a lot of work here, because time, it's an interesting thing, the way the world is. Everybody's in, instant gratification, like, okay, what's up with this womb surround? This is what I want, and I want to do it now and be done with it. But as we all know, or many people out there in computer land will, if you really invest your interest, your time, and other things, you'll realize that, you really have nothing but the rest of your life to explore, your whole life. And that includes before you got here. I have days where I'm like, well, I think I'm going to retire. This is a lot of work, emails and, executive function is not my bag. I need like 3 assistants, and there's nobody around but me, and I got broken pencils, and, it's.
Frank, I'd love to just say that as you're speaking about taking the womb with you, before you said that, I was sitting here thinking and getting a real felt sense of how present you are inside of that sensation of the fluid in the womb. And I was feeling the amniotic fluid just all over my face as you were talking. And I was feeling even some of my own glitches in the womb as you were
Yeah,
speaking, going,
sure.
oh, that's interesting. Like I'm experiencing a transmission of moving in the womb as you speak.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of exciting my interest to do one of these workshops with you. I'd
Yeah,
like to have this experience that Kate described.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't want to, I really want to emphasize is what I'm trying to say, that the ability to be present as you are, so in such a fluid way, using language, words, I don't think people realize what an achievement that is. You know, most of us don't hang out in this space of consciousness. And I can really feel your mastery here. And all the accumulated experiences you had and how easy you are in this space, which also helps me to feel that sense of safety and ease. So thank you. And I'm also a New Yorker that then relocated to Ojai. So I know that
Yeah.
experience of Planet Ojai that you
Right.
described.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. That's
But
right.
but I feel the transformation that you went through and just your passion for this. So it's wonderful to hear about this from you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's been a process. It's certainly recently working with Anna Chitty and doing really working on things like evolution. Because the presence and the consciousness, my consciousness would have these big shifts. Like, once I was driving in Ojai, driving out to Ventura, and I was just driving, and I was just like, you're a totally different person.
Mhm.
You're not the same person. And I started crying.
Mhm.
It was so touching to me. And I'm like, why have you done this? Why have you left everything familiar in New York and just spent all this time alone? A lot of inward time, periods of time, missing friends, missing my relatives, missing my band here in New York. All the things that were here, moving very fast and loud, and saying, "What the hell are you doing out there?" And then that question comes to me, and the answer is, I'm changing, shifting, evolving. I wasn't looking at it like, well, I actually was like, hey, look where you are, dude. You're in Ojai. Look at where you are. You got like Krishnamurti hanging out over there. You got this person over here, Ray's over here. All these people doing all this stuff. Um, I was like, I'm different. And it's because I've been here and got interested and got involved and assisted all these womb surrounds. And something had to happen, something, and it did. And it's still happening. There's like a new layer of some type of expansion that, because when Ray passed away, which was very hard for me because he died, 3 days after my father. So it was a huge thing to sit with. And that coupled with COVID and just coming back from Ojai, the whole transition went kaplooey with COVID. I decided to take a pause from the work. I didn't open any books. I didn't unpack my boxes. I didn't unpack my notes. I had no intentions of doing any womb surrounds online, and I still haven't. And I was in Ray's supervision group, and he laughed at me every session because I'd be like, I don't know, I can't find the impulse to do one online. These days, I think I can because there's really no the borders are really I'm working on so much of the resistance and things that have been very much clutching so deeply in my experience. Uh, I have a PhD in hypervigilance. So it's like it's taking me years to soften that. It is a joke and it's not a joke. It's not a joke. It's something that I actually go, my God, I've moved away from being hypervigilant. I don't know if it's like I'm approaching 60 and life is becoming easier. I think it's a combination of experience and the work that I've been involved in and people. And the evolution is very interesting because I'm dead center in a place where I grew up that's pretty hostile. You know, most of the people that I grew up with that are basically my family, my friends, it's like a gang, and most of them never even had a massage, and they're going to vote for Trump. So, that's where I came from. You pausing?
No. I wanted to just like, as you're speaking about this,
Yeah, my body goes this way, like, oh.
well, no, because no, I actually want to say I have come back and I'm with my family in a way that I haven't been. And there's a way, I was really like just what Kate said and what Allison said. There's a way that in a womb surround, the possibility in a womb surround is to connect with new possibilities, the blueprint. And I'm really hearing you talk about that. And what my experience in being with my family now after I've transformed is that there's so many possibilities. And so there's a way that I'm really just like circling back to the continuum, the womb continuum. Like there's these possibilities of eliciting health and just like in a way of transmission. I mean, there's the form of the womb surround, but then there's something about you coming into like where you came from with like kind of being this doorway to possibilities.
Yeah, well, it's all about creativity. Everything, every moment of every day, of every second, to me, is a creative opportunity. And it's taken me years to realize that that's really always, I've been zigging and zagging out of that consciousness because of whatever came my way, and distraction and, ADD, oh, you got ADD, or you got, I'm like, dude, I got the whole alphabet, and I know how to access pleasure in my life. And I realized that every moment, every movement, and every gesture is a creative act. I mean, we are moving paintings, and sound is my paint. When I teach continuum, I always teach that sound is colorful, and it's a very beautiful thing. I'm in conversation, and hopefully eventually do some work with Anna because she kind of can feel that. And I recently did a continuum thing out in Boulder before the cranial training last module. And it's fascinating to be with Anna, to be with Liz and the baby, and a field of people who really got how sound and movement is colorful. It opens up the colors in our lives, and it takes and makes new color. We come out of it, like we use the octopus. The octopus moves, and they're constantly moving, so omnidirectional, so polyrhythmic movement. Where it affects the water. I mean, this is the skin, and here's the water's in here moving all the time, moving with gravity, moving with viscosity. And these things are in the womb, the amnion and the act of creativity, of being in the womb and actually being created, has sound. It's not a silent situation underneath our skin. It's a neighborhood of unbelievable capacity.
Yeah.
So much help. There's so much capacity. My thing is, can I get to the deepest part of my bones and find consciousness and heal? I have a hip that's either going to get replaced or it's going to be healed. I don't know which way it's going to go. People are saying, how did your hip feel? lately it's feeling good because I don't know, I'm in some different, my consciousness is changing. So pain has a certain, of any kind, there's a certain vibration of, like almost a pre-verbal shadow of sound that is, it takes some time. I think I'm starting to hone into something that's so deep in me. And it's happening because I'm reflecting with so many people. Like I spent a weekend with Kate and the team, and I come back and wow, my body feels robust. I feel robust. Like I'm like, yeah, I can do my laundry. I can pick up my mother and go have lunch. I can do this. I can do 3 sessions and orient, take a shower, and be here and be on this call without any tension. It's a good day. It doesn't happen every day. It's ebbs and flows to everything, but it's all situated around, the fluid. How are the fluids moving in my body? Because Emily always said, and I really think it's true, how we move is how we think. How we move is how we think. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I want to take that in. Can I call a pause, Frank?
Yeah, please do.
How we move is how we think. Thank you, Frank. And I'm wondering if we could just talk a little about, like, in pre-perinatal work, like in pre and perinatal somatics. I'm wondering if you could voice from this place of the fluid dynamics that you are so familiar with that fluid sound, alchemy background. Where do you see our field going, Frank? What would be your vision, since it's about possibility from your perspective?
From my perspective, I think that the movement of all of us is very concentrated and has been very concentrated and growing. And I'd like to be part of the conversation. There's a lot of people that will hear the message. And it's interesting how we're creating something. I'm looking at ways of like being musical, like artistic, like this, things coming through the arts. And I think it has been, that the arts, because it is, being born is like the most creative act. Being a music person and being someone that really into creativity, I was just like, and I still am. I'm like, well, everything kind of moves from the sequence of birth, the creativity of how we were created. I would like to see the consciousness, like let's get under the chop, into some of the ease and to the health. I walk around New York and it makes me sad sometimes, but I just walk around trying to emote and not even have to say anything, like, oh my God, there's so much love and light in even the people that I disagree with. I'm getting to a place of just our presence, like Ray always said, your presence is enough. So what I hope for, and I think that we're doing slow, because we're in the concentrated movement of, doing so much. Everybody does so much and takes it out into the world, takes it out into their life. And I hope with time, we can make a difference, because it's, a lot of people are in their minds and they're maybe not even in their minds. They're wondering why they're here. And I think the question is wondering if you're here. Emily used to say that also, if you're here. So this is where this is the corner that I believe in. Like I take what Ray and all these folks, and there's so many different people that have done so much work around the birth work, and people who inspired Ray. I really am so grateful to these people, and hope that whatever I can do, I'm trying to just formulate something and pitch in, and thankfully things like this, they help me to orient to a structure. Kate, I really thank you for that. How to make, and Kristin too. I know you have ways of moving things that are, like, wow. I'd like to see us all support each other and create something that I know is right there, and it is a beautiful thing, to sit with folks. I sat in a session today, and someone told me about the 3 of her pregnancies and births, and I got to reflect parts of the sequence that were challenging, and it changed her life. It's like, I can't believe it. It feels, because it is like, there is a blueprint. There's all this, the structures, and I don't have all the words, geometric structures. And she was looking at birth in this geometric way, and it was a beautiful conversation, because it's all about collaboration. And sometimes, my sequences is I get very like, ooh, I got this thought, I got this thing, and wrestle with it.
I have a question for you, Frank.
Yes, Christine.
It's lovely hearing about your journey, and I've known you since 2010.
Yeah.
And you said you've changed quite a bit, over the years, and you're talking now about bringing it out, and as people supporting other people through the process and connecting. I'm curious what really has supported you throughout the journey. I love how you stay connected. You bring the womb with you, and feeling you embody what you're speaking is beautiful. And I have also heard you, coming back to New York was challenging, and the different aspects. Life is out there, and generally people are moving at a very different pace. What would you say to people who are like, how did you do that? How did you stay connected to, and what supported you in this journey?
Well, I keep some, good people around me that support me. I get sessions, and I work with different people that support me. I support people, and I need to be supported, and there's always room for more support. And things like doing continuum every day is very supportive for me. I don't usually walk out the door unless I do some continuum. I have a better day to do that. But I have people that, I have a friend that I did the training with in 2010. We're going on 12 years of every Tuesday. We meet up and we do a trade online. We call it Sacred Tuesday. And that's probably the number one thing that is, like, I know tomorrow's Tuesday, and my system just settles saying, oh, it's Sacred Tuesday. I'm going to get to sit with my friend for 2, sometimes 3 hours, and just see what wants to be revealed. And I rely on the field. What supports me, my consciousness, and I've dared the field to support me, and it did. And I have ways. I went out on my own, and I did my womb surrounds with no co-facilitator, no assistance, just me, and finding my tempo with continuum. I dared the field to support that. I says, if you're out there, come and support. Get by. Get over here. Keep. And I still do that, but I don't dare it anymore. I was very like, this field, wow. Okay, let's try this on.
What I hear is that you trust the field. You trust the field. Right?
I can trust. I can be supported, and we can. Listen, I'm hardcore. New Yorker. We don't ask anybody for anything. We figure it out ourselves, And if we can't figure it out, we break it. It's like, throw away the manual.
Well, I hear that's not what you've done, Frank Carbone.
No, I've done the other. I know that way. And now I'm going a different way.
And you
I
are.
read the directions, I take my time, and I build it. And I'm like, oh, an IKEA table.
Well, I think
A body.
the universe has responded, though, Frank. The universe has responded now. So I love this.
Well,
It's
I like,
coming.
I take my vitamins and I ask myself every day, what is a body? What is a body? I want to ask every single ear that can hear my words, and you can send me your results. What is a body?
That's a good
Because
question.
when I ask that question, I can feel myself. I get like goosebumps.
I
I don't talk to myself.
I'm going to send you my definition.
Yeah. Well, I have a creative project. I intend to make a movie just asking about 100 different people, what is a body? And the name will be, what is a body?
Okay.
And I think it'll be pretty interesting to see what 100 different people say a body is. And I just realized that I want to have 100 people.
All right.
I have a list. And all of you are on it. You're on my short list.
Oh no. Well, good. Well, then maybe we'll find ourselves in your movie, Frank Carbone.
Well, I'm going to create it. I'm going to produce the music and the whole storyboard, the whole sequence.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
it's been wonderful to have you here at the Hearth for an
Thank
interview.
you. Salute.
And, salute. But does anyone else have a final inquiry or question or comment for Frank before we complete?
Well, what I just want to reflect as you were talking about what is the body, as I was really listening to you share with my body, I really hear how much your body guided you into this whole journey. And I could really feel that each moment, like even sitting there in the womb surround and like saying, I'm so squiggly. And I'm like, oh no, your body was already
speaking. Yeah.
And moving its way. So I'm just really appreciating the journey of the body that you took us on. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for coming, Frank.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, keep on churning.
Yes.
Thanks, Frank.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great being with you.